The incident. The message arrived on Earth at 3:47 Universal Standard Time. In the centuries since humanity had joined the galactic community, the diplomatic corps had received countless transmissions, but none like this. The holographic projection showed a trading outpost on Proxima VI, its normally bustling marketplace eerily still. At its center lay a small figure, motionless. Ambassador Sarah Chen watched the recording for the fourth time, her hands gripping the edge of her desk until her knuckles turned white. The victim was Marcus Torres, age 8, son of cargo pilot Maria Torres. His crime: being in the wrong place when Imperial enforcement officers decided to make an example of human interference in their territories. They didn't even try to hide it, General Davidson muttered, his weathered face illuminated by the hologram's blue glow. They wanted us to see. Yes, Chen replied, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. They wanted to show us our place in their galaxy. They've always seen us as primitive, weak. She paused, allowing herself a thin smile. It seems our deception worked too well. The deception she referred to was centuries in the making. While the Galactic Empire looked down on Earth as a backwater planet struggling with basic spaceflight, humanity had been preparing. Deep beneath the oceans, inside hollow moons, and in pocket dimensions, Earth had built its response to any potential threat. Project Guardian, they called it. A fleet of warships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council is convening in 30 minutes, Davidson said, checking his neural interface. They'll want to know if it's time. Chen stood, smoothing her diplomatic robes. It's been time for 100 years, General. We just needed them to give us a reason that would unite all of humanity. She gestured to the hologram. They just gave us one. The Emergency Planetary Council chamber was carved from a single piece of marble, a relic from humanity's primitive past. Representatives from every nation and colony sat in concentric circles, their faces grim. Above them, the recording played in silence. Council leader Amara Okafor raised her hand, and the hologram froze. The Empire believes they have taught us a lesson in humility, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Instead, they have given us clarity. The vote before us is simple. Do we reveal ourselves now, or do we wait? There was no debate. No impassioned speeches, just a sea of raised hands. In bases across the solar system and beyond, sealed orders were opened. The facade of primitive humanity began to crack. In the Kuiper Belt, massive hangar doors opened for the first time in decades. From Jupiter's clouds emerged ships that had been hiding in plain sight. Beneath Earth's oceans, vessels larger than cities began their ascent. Aboard the flagship Nemesis, Admiral James Wright received the activation codes he had trained his entire life to use. Around him, crew members moved with practiced precision, their movements rehearsed countless times for this very moment. Deploy the quantum shields, he ordered. Begin fleet-wide power-up sequence. The ships that emerged were not the crude vessels the Empire was familiar with. These were the products of centuries of hidden advancement, combining technologies humanity had developed in secret with reverse-engineered systems from a dozen alien civilizations. Each ship was a testament to human ingenuity and determination. In orbit around Mars, Ambassador Chen watched the fleet assemble. 500,000 ships, each one capable of facing down an Imperial battle group. The Empire had killed a child to prove their superiority. In doing so, they had awakened something they couldn't possibly understand, the full might of a humanity that had spent centuries preparing for this very moment. Send the message, she commanded. Across Imperial space, communication channels lit up with a simple transmission. You believed us weak. You thought us primitive. You killed our child to prove your power. Now, witness ours. The fleet moved as one, jumping to faster-than-light speeds. The time for hiding was over. Humanity was going to war, not with the reluctance of the oppressed, but with the calculated fury of a species that had been waiting for this moment. The Empire was about to learn that they hadn't been observing a primitive civilization. They had been watching a snake coil to strike, and they had just stepped on its tail. In the darkness of space, 500,000 ships carried with them humanity's response to centuries of condescension and one final, unforgivable act. The galaxy was about to change, and the Empire had no one to blame but themselves. The war had begun. Hidden Arsenal. Admiral Wright stood at the command center of the Nemesis, watching as the massive fleet moved through hyperspace. Each ship in the Armada was a masterpiece of deception, their true nature hidden beneath layers of technological camouflage that had fooled the Empire's sensors for centuries. "Status report," he commanded, his voice steady despite the weight of history pressing down on this moment. "All ships reporting ready, Admiral." Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka responded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "The quantum shield harmonics are stable, and weapon systems are hot across all vessels." The fleet's true capabilities were finally being unveiled. What appeared to the Empire as simple hull plating was actually crystallized dark matter armor. The seemingly primitive fusion engines were quantum singularity drives capable of tearing holes in space-time. Every primitive aspect of human technology had been carefully crafted to hide something far more devastating. Deep within the Nemesis, Dr. Elena Rodriguez supervised the final calibration of the ship's primary weapon system. The Void Lance, as they called it, was the culmination of 200 years of research into quantum mechanics and dimensional physics. The Empire's shields would never be able to stop something they couldn't detect until it was too late. "They're going to think we made a deal with the devil," Elena muttered to herself, checking the final calculations. In truth, humanity had made no deals. They had simply been patient, methodical, and utterly devoted to their own survival. The ship's AI, Araya, manifested as a holographic presence beside her. "Dr. Rodriguez, I've completed the fleet-wide weapons sync. All ships are reporting optimal configuration." Araya was another secret, far more advanced than the crude VI systems the Empire believed humans capable of creating. In the diplomatic vessel trailing the fleet, Ambassador Chen was conducting a very different kind of preparation. Before her stretched a holographic map of the Empire's territory, with key strategic points highlighted in red. These weren't just military targets. They were the nodes of power that held the Empire's bureaucracy together. "The Empire believes they know everything about us," she addressed the gathered fleet commanders. "Their archaeological surveys found exactly what we wanted them to find. Their spies reported exactly what we wanted them to see. For 300 years, we have been playing a role, and now the curtain rises on our true performance." The fleet's deception went beyond just technology. Every human colony, every trade route, every diplomatic mission had been carefully orchestrated to present an image of a species just beginning to grasp the complexities of galactic civilization. In reality, human influence had spread far deeper into the Empire than anyone suspected. "Signal from deep cover assets confirmed," reported Commander Marcus Chen, Sarah's brother and head of intelligence operations. "Our agents are in position throughout Imperial space. When we strike, they'll ensure maximum chaos in their command structure." These agents were another layer of humanity's preparation. Civilians, traders, and diplomatic staff who had spent years building lives within the Empire while carefully gathering intelligence and placing themselves in key positions. They weren't spies in the traditional sense. They were architects of the Empire's coming paralysis. Admiral Wright reviewed the final attack plans with his command staff. The holographic display showed their first targets, not the obvious military installations, but rather a complex web of seemingly innocuous facilities that would bring the Empire's vaunted coordination to its knees. "The Empire believes they know war," Wright addressed his officers. "They believe they understand power, but they have only ever fought enemies who play by their rules. We have spent centuries learning their game while developing our own." In the ship's massive engineering section, Chief Engineer Mohammed Hassan supervised the final adjustments to the quantum drive. The Empire's scientists had theorized such technology was centuries away from development. They would soon learn how wrong they were. All systems are showing green, Hassan reported through the ship's comm system. The fleet is ready to transition to full combat status. Throughout the Armada, similar scenes played out. Weapons officers calibrated systems that defied Imperial physics. Shield technicians fine-tuned defenses that operated on principles the Empire had never imagined. Each crew member had trained their entire lives for this moment, carrying the weight of generations of preparation. Ambassador Chen received updates from her brother as the Empire's response unfolded. "They're falling back to Plan Omega," Marcus reported. "Full military mobilization, martial law across all sectors. They're even releasing the forbidden technologies from the Vault of Ix." "Good," Chen replied. "Let them bring out everything they have. It will save us the trouble of hunting it all down later." The Empire's Worldbreaker platform began to power up, its energy readings climbing to unprecedented levels. Fleet Commander Zix watched with satisfaction as the weapon prepared to fire. This would show the humans the true meaning of power. "Target their main fleet concentration," she ordered. "Let's end this invasion here and now." But Admiral Wright and his fleet weren't where the Empire's sensors showed them to be. The humans had learned long ago how to project false fleet signatures, and the Empire was about to waste their ultimate weapon on a constellation of sophisticated decoys. The Worldbreaker fired, its beam capable of unmaking matter itself. The false fleet vanished, and for a moment, the Empire celebrated. Then the real human fleet appeared, having used the Empire's own weapon signature to mask their quantum jump. "All ships, execute Operation Eclipse," Wright commanded. The human fleet moved in perfect synchronization, their formations creating a complex geometric pattern in space. Energy began to flow between the ships, forming a lattice of quantum connections. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the readings. "Quantum web is stable, Admiral, ready to receive and redirect." The Empire watched in horror as their ultimate weapon's energy was caught in humanity's quantum web, channeled and redirected back at their own fleet. The Worldbreaker platform, along with a third of the Imperial home fleet, vanished in an ironic display of their own weapons' power. In the Imperial palace, High Admiral Vexthor received the news with numbing dread. They had just lost their last, best hope of stopping the human advance. But worse than the military defeat was the growing realization of what they had done. They had awakened something they couldn't possibly defeat. "Send the call," he ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "Activate the Terminus Protocol. Better to destroy our own infrastructure than let it fall into their hands." But even this last, desperate measure played into humanity's plans. As the Empire's self-destruct sequences activated across their territory, they found their commands being redirected, their own systems turned against them by centuries of careful infiltration. Ambassador Chen watched as the Empire's attempts at scorched earth tactics backfired. "Send word to all our cells," she ordered. "Begin Phase 4. It's time to show them how completely we've taken control." The Empire had thought themselves the masters of the galaxy, until a single act of cruelty against a human child revealed their true position. Not as rulers, but as unwitting participants in humanity's longest-running deception. As their desperation mounted, the Empire's leaders began to understand the true scope of their mistake. They hadn't simply provoked a war, they had triggered a trap centuries in the making. And as their last defenses crumbled, they realized that humanity hadn't been hiding in fear. They had been waiting in preparation. The stage was set for the final confrontation. The Empire had played every card in their hand, used every weapon in their arsenal, and still found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. All that remained was the final strike, and the galaxy would never be the same. Final reckoning. The Imperial capital world of Thenor Prime gleamed like a jewel in space, its orbital rings and defensive platforms, a testament to millennia of dominion over the galaxy. Now those defenses stood as humanity's final obstacle, the last barrier between the Empire and total defeat. High Admiral Vexthor stood in the Imperial throne room before Emperor Zaxel himself, the first time in centuries that a military commander had been granted such an audience. "My Emperor," he said, his translator struggling to maintain composure, "we have one final option. The Nexus Key." The Emperor's crystalline form pulsed with dark energy. The Nexus Key was more than a weapon. It was the source of the Empire's first rise to power, an artifact that had given them dominion over space-time itself. Using it would break every treaty, every law the Empire had established. But they were beyond such concerns now. Aboard the Nemesis, Admiral Wright received the intelligence with grim satisfaction. "They're going to use it," he announced to his command staff, exactly as the precursors said they would. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up the quantum scans they'd been gathering for centuries. "The key's energy signature is already building. But thanks to the precursor data, we know exactly how to counter it." Deep within Imperial space, carefully hidden quantum beacons activated, creating a network of navigation points that allowed the human fleet to strike anywhere, instantly. The Empire had unknowingly allowed these devices to be installed over centuries, dismissing them as primitive navigation buoys or scientific instruments. "Admiral," Aria's holographic form appeared on the bridge. "Imperial reinforcements are attempting to organize a counterattack. They're adopting a Thraxian defense formation." "Perfect," Wright responded. "They're still fighting the last war. Execute maneuver Delta 7. The human fleet split apart in a manner that would have appeared chaotic to Imperial tacticians. But there was nothing chaotic about it. Each ship's movement was precisely calculated to exploit weaknesses in Imperial formation doctrines that humanity had spent centuries studying. The Empire's reinforcement fleet found itself fighting shadows. Human ships would appear in their sensor blind spots, strike with devastating force, and vanish before they could respond. The proud Imperial Navy, undefeated for millennia, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy they had dismissed as primitives. Dr. Rodriguez's voice came over the command channel. "Admiral, the Void Lance has recharged. All sister ships report ready for synchronized strike." Wright nodded. "Target their flagship. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." Across the human fleet, weapons that defied Imperial physics powered up. The Empire was about to learn that humanity hadn't spent centuries hiding in fear. They had spent it preparing to change the rules of warfare itself. The synchronized strike that followed would be remembered in Imperial records as the moment everything changed. Multiple void lances fired simultaneously, their effects amplified by carefully planned quantum resonance. The Imperial flagship, along with its escort fleet, simply ceased to exist in normal space. As the dust settled from the first engagement, Admiral Wright opened a channel to all ships. "Phase 1 complete. Prepare for Phase 2. The Empire is about to learn that killing a human child was the worst mistake they've ever made." The first strike was over. The Empire's myth of invincibility had been shattered, and humanity was just getting started. Empire's desperation. High Admiral Vexthor stood in the Imperial Palace's war room, watching as another sector went dark on the grand strategic display. His tentacles writhed in agitation as reports of defeat after defeat flooded in. The humans weren't just winning. They were systematically dismantling the Empire's military infrastructure with terrifying precision. "How?" he demanded, his translator struggling to convey the mix of fury and fear in his voice. "How did we miss this? How did they hide such power from us?" The Imperial Science Director, Kalin, projected a hologram of a human vessel's energy signature. "Their deception was perfect, High Admiral. Every piece of technology they showed us was carefully crafted to appear primitive while masking something far more advanced. We've been studying shadows while they prepared for this moment." In orbit above the Empire's capital world, the last of their legendary immortal fleet was being mobilized. Ships that hadn't seen combat in centuries were pulled from memorial docks, their crews a mixture of veterans and hastily trained recruits. The Empire was calling in every favor, every ally, every resource they had. Aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Glory, Fleet Commander Zix prepared what she believed would be the Empire's masterstroke. "The humans think they know all our capabilities," she addressed her command staff. "But they don't know about the Worldbreaker." The Worldbreaker was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a closely guarded secret that could theoretically destroy entire star systems. It had never been used, deemed too dangerous even by Imperial standards. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Back on the Nemesis, Admiral Wright received the intelligence report with a grim smile. "They're deploying the Worldbreaker," he informed his command staff. "Right on schedule." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her station. "Admiral, our quantum sensors detected their weapon's power-up sequence. It's exactly as our infiltrators reported. They have no idea we've known about it for decades." The Empire's desperation was showing in other ways. They had begun executing suspected human sympathizers, not realizing that humanity's true agents were so deeply embedded they were the ones ordering the executions. Each attempt to root out human influence only spread more chaos through their ranks. Ambassador Chen received the final readiness reports with a grim satisfaction. The Empire had killed a child to demonstrate their power. In response, humanity would show them what true power looked like, not the brute force of Imperial might, but the calculated, patient strength of a species that had turned deception into an art form. "Send the final authorization," she commanded. "It's time to show the galaxy who we really are." Throughout the fleet, encrypted commands activated protocols that had lain dormant for centuries. The ship's outer hulls began to shift, quantum restructuring revealing their true forms. What had appeared to be a fleet of primitive warships transformed into something that would haunt Imperial nightmares for generations to come. The arsenal was revealed. The trap was set. And in the cold depths of space, humanity prepared to demonstrate just how dangerous patience could be. First strike. The Imperial border station Outpost 774 was having an ordinary day when their sensors detected something unusual. The officer on duty, Lieutenant Kexeri, dismissed the reading as an equipment malfunction. After all, the primitive human vessels never ventured this far into Imperial space, and their sensors showed nothing that matched known ship signatures. That was their first mistake. The human fleet dropped out of quantum space directly within the Imperial defense grid. The Empire's most sophisticated detection systems had been completely blind to their approach. Admiral Wright stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, watching as the Imperial stations scrambled to respond to their sudden appearance. "All ships, execute Protocol Omega," Wright commanded. "Show them what we can do." The response from the Imperial Defense Fleet was exactly what humanity had predicted, a textbook deployment of forces designed to contain and eliminate a conventional threat. But this was no conventional threat. The Void Lance aboard Nemesis powered up, its energy signature unlike anything in Imperial records. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the readings from her station. Primary weapon charged. Quantum harmonics stable, ready to fire on your command. "Admiral, target their command and control center," Wright ordered. "Let's show them what primitive technology can do." The beam that erupted from Nemesis wasn't visible to the naked eye, but its effects were catastrophic. It didn't impact the Imperial station's shields. It simply ignored them, as if they didn't exist. The station, pride of Imperial engineering, collapsed in on itself as space-time twisted and warped around it. Throughout the Imperial fleet, panic began to spread. Their sensors couldn't lock onto the human ships properly. Their weapons, designed to combat known technologies, found no purchase against the quantum shields. And their communications were being systematically disrupted by frequencies they couldn't even detect. Commander Sarah Chen's deep cover agents began their work. Throughout Imperial space, carefully placed programs activated, spreading chaos through their command structure. Navigation systems failed. Weapon systems received contradictory commands. The Empire's mighty war machine began to stutter and stall. Multiple Imperial dreadnoughts approaching from Vector 317, Lieutenant Tanaka reported. "They're charging their main batteries." Admiral Wright allowed himself a small smile. "Deploy the Phantom Squadron." A wing of smaller ships detached from the main fleet, their forms shimming like heat waves in desert air. These were the products of Project Shadow, vessels that could phase partially out of normal spacetime, becoming virtually impossible to target. The Imperial Dreadnoughts fired their main batteries, their energy weapons passing harmlessly through the approaching human ships. The Phantom Squadron's counterattack was devastating. Their weapons, operating on principles the Empire had never encountered, tore through Imperial shields as if they were paper. Ships that had terrorized dozens of species found themselves helpless against an enemy they couldn't effectively fight. In the diplomatic vessel, Ambassador Chen watched the battle unfold through secure feeds. "Status of Operation Blackout?" she asked. Marcus Chen consulted his displays. "Our agents have successfully compromised 87% of their primary communication nodes. The Empire's response time is deteriorating rapidly." The human fleet moved with precision that spoke of centuries of preparation. Each ship knew its role, each weapon found its mark, and each strategy unfolded exactly as planned. This wasn't just a military operation. It was the culmination of generations of planning and preparation. The truth that the Empire was about to discover was that humanity's preparation went far deeper than mere technology. In humanity's distant past, they had been contacted not by the Empire, but by the Precursors, the ancient race that had created the Nexus Key and watched as the Empire stole and misused it. The Precursors had seen in humanity something they'd never found in the Empire: patience, the ability to plan not for years or decades, but for centuries. And so they had shared their knowledge, knowing that one day the Empire would go too far and humanity would be ready to set things right. Ambassador Chen stood on her diplomatic vessel, watching the final pieces fall into place. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Tell our agents in the Imperial Palace it's time." Deep within the palace vaults, carefully placed human agents moved into position. The Empire had never questioned why so many of their most trusted servants came from species that resembled humans, another layer of deception in humanity's grand plan. As the Emperor initiated the Nexus Key's power sequence, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. The key's energy signature was building, but not in the way the Empire had expected. Instead of granting them power over reality itself, it was creating a quantum resonance with every piece of hidden human technology they had allowed into their society over the centuries. "What's happening?" the Emperor demanded, his crystalline form flickering with confusion and fear. High Admiral Vexthor watched in horror as the truth revealed itself through his command displays. The humans hadn't just been hiding their technology. They had been seeding the Empire with devices specifically designed to interface with the Nexus Key. Each piece was insignificant alone, but together they formed a galaxy-spanning network that was now coming alive. Admiral Wright opened a channel to all ships. "Execute final protocol. The Precursors send their regards." The human fleet moved into a formation that had been planned millennia ago, their ships creating a perfect geometric pattern around Thenor Prime. The quantum web they generated wasn't just a weapon, it was the key to fulfilling the Precursors' final design. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the quantum readings as they reached critical levels. "The resonance is perfect, Admiral. The Nexus Key is responding exactly as the Precursors predicted." In the Imperial Palace, the Emperor watched as the Nexus Key, source of their power for so long, turned against them. The artifact's energy began flowing through the human network, its power being redistributed across the galaxy to undo millennia of Imperial manipulation of spacetime. Ambassador Chen transmitted the final message to the Empire. "You thought you were the inheritors of the Precursors' legacy, but you were only ever holding their power in trust until those they chose to be its true guardians were ready. The child you killed was the last test, the final proof that you were unworthy of the power you stole." The Nexus Key's energy reached its peak, and reality itself seemed to shudder. Throughout Imperial space, the fundamental changes they had made to the galaxy over millennia began to unwind, not with destruction, but with restoration. "You won't destroy us," the Emperor asked, watching as his empire's power literally disappeared around him. No, Admiral Wright responded through the palace communications. The precursors chose us precisely because we understand something you never did. True power isn't about destruction. It's about protection, about patience, about understanding when not to use the power you have. The quantum cascade reached its conclusion. The Empire's capital world was intact, but forever changed. The artificial spatial distortions that had maintained their power for so long were gone. They were simply one world among many now, no more or less significant than any other. In orbit, the human fleet began to power down their weapons. They had achieved their victory not through destruction, but by setting right what the Empire had wronged so long ago. The death of a single child had been the catalyst, but the true victory had been set in motion long before humanity had even reached the stars. Ambassador Chen transmitted the final terms of surrender. You will live. You will remember. And you will understand that every child, every life, every world has value. That was the Precursor's final lesson, one you failed to learn, and one we will now teach to the galaxy. As the Imperial leadership was taken into custody, Admiral Wright looked out at the changed galaxy before them. Humanity had been chosen not for their potential for violence, but for their capacity for patience, for protection, for understanding the true weight of power. The war was over. The Empire had fallen, and humanity had proven themselves worthy of the trust placed in them so long ago. Not through force of arms, but through the strength of their conviction and the depth of their preparation. In the end, the death of one child had changed the galaxy. Not through the vengeance it inspired, but by proving once and for all that humanity was ready for the responsibility the precursors had seen in them so long ago. The stars shone a little brighter that day, as if the galaxy itself was breathing a sigh of relief. The long game was finally over, and a new era was about to begin.